Welcome to the Pewtercast. This is our final thoughts episode for the Bucs versus the Browns game, where the Buccaneers just barely eked one out, coming out on top 26-23. I am Brent Allen, your host. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend Ren the Man Daxt. Ren, what's going on, buddy?
Ren the Man Daxt.
Listen, Ren, because here's the deal. No, here's the deal. You got
Is it my music choice? It was my music choice.
That would not get you.
I knew you would like it.
It would not get
it
you.
Was so good.
No.
Dude, you cannot tell me that after. Did you listen to the whole thing?
I did, and I heard the end one.
Hey, come on, it gave you a little smile when you heard like Michael Knight, Fringe. Come on, that had to make you smile a little bit. Are you too young to remember Knight Rider?
No, I'm not. No, I definitely remember Knight Rider, the Hoff. But no, Ren, the reason why I'm calling you Ren the Man Daxt is because you set up a killer guest for tonight's show. And I am so looking forward to get to talk to this person. And, you know, it's one of those weird things. Like, I kind of think that most Buccaneers fans would be like, who? Like, yeah, like who? Like, oh, that guy. Oh, let's listen to that guy and see what's going on with him. So I'm super excited. We are going to be talking to, well, Ren, he's your guest. You got it set up. Why don't you introduce our friends to our guest for tonight?
Sure. We got Steve Versnik on from Sports Day Tampa Bay. He is the co-host and producer of the Rick Stoud Sports Day Tampa Bay. Formerly used to be Rick Stoud and Tom Jones. After a few months, Tom Jones bailed out. We're going to find out why, hopefully, tonight. And Steve, who was just producing the show, sort of stepped in as Rick's co-host. And when that happened, the amount of knowledge, sports knowledge this guy has, and the people that he's worked with and met, I'm just like, we got to get this guy on.
Yeah.
And, you know, and he's extremely knowledgeable about all the sports. He's been in radio, pretty much broadcasting, you know, sports networks his whole entire life. And like I said, I was so impressed with his sports knowledge, and I reached out to him, and it worked out. And so we got him all lined up for tonight's show. And hint, hint, it's already been pre-recorded. I think you're really gonna like the conversation. You know, we talk, of course, Bucs football, but we also talk about the pod, and you hear some stories about it's 620 DAE that you probably didn't know. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, where he goes into this list of people that he's worked with, you're like, oh my God. It's like,
yeah.
how do I get your job exactly? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Do you feel well? Does that
right.
Do you need somebody to carry your coffee for minimum wage?
Right. Can I be your intern? So, Bucs fans, we are going to be getting into that right on the other side of the intro here. And then following that, Ren and I are going to stick around. We're actually going to have a second guest on tonight's show, Ren. I'm very excited.
What?
Yeah, we'll introduce you guys to him when we get to that spot. However, that's where we're going to be talking about our final thoughts on the Bucs versus the Browns. We had the instant cast. Ren, I was out. Ren had Gene from Buck What You Heard, and you guys did a great job kind of going through those first response reactions to the game. It's been a couple days now. We've been able to let it sit, digest it a little bit, so we'll revisit the game, and whatever we didn't get to talk about or whatever kind of final thoughts we have, we're going to be doing that, and then we will grade out the game as well. And then for the second half of our show tonight, like always, we're going to be diving in to all of the interactions that we've gotten from you, our fellow Buccaneer fans. We've got emails. We've got actually, I don't think we have any iTunes reviews this time, Ren, so we'll just get some emails and some other things going on, but I can't wait to get into it because that always sparks great conversation. So without further ado, Ren, let's get into it on today's episode of The Pewtercast.
Let's have a great night on the dance floor. I'll be the cowboy on the wild horse, and if we don't drown when we're swimming the shore, I'll be the third in line to get us.
Yeah, big fan of the pod. So you know, I've been listening since day one. If you ever get those tweets like at 1 a.m. going, "Hey, I need to go to bed. Where's the pod?" I like to listen.
Yeah, we need to go to bed too. We got to start taping these things earlier than we do.
Well, you can't. You got to wait for the baseball game to end. You got to wait for the hockey game to end. It's just the way it is. But
yeah, a lot of times I'm working the game, so it makes it even harder. So I think this is the first time I've ever been invited on a podcast. So
all right.
I was hoping so, and one of the reasons, and when we were chatting back and forth a little bit in DM, was like, your knowledge of Tampa Bay sports is, off the charts as far as I'm concerned, and I think you're one of those people that I could sit there all day, belly up to the bar and share some beers and talk Tampa Bay sports. And we looked down our watches like, oh, it's been 6 hours. I guess we better go home to the ladies.
Better settle up that bar tab. It's going to be quite big.
Yeah. Well, okay. If you drink a lot, that's fine. We'll cut that out.
After 6 hours, I mean.
So, Sports Day Tampa Bay is the pod that you do 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, with Rick Stoud from the Tampa Bay Times. Can you sort of – a lot of our listeners know Tom Jones and Rick Stoud from their days at 620 DAE, and I was one of the people who were super bummed that it went away. So can you sort of talk about your involvement and how this pod got started, and and talk about what you guys do there?
Well, let's go back a little further. So in May of 2012, I actually hired Rick Stoud and Tom Jones to host the mornings on WDAE.
Oh, okay.
For those who don't know, I was the program director of WDAE for 2 years until iHeart had their annual winter layoffs, and I was let go in December of 2012. So I'm actually the ones responsible for putting Rick and Tom on the radio. So fast forward to about 2 years ago this month, on a Friday, I get a call both from Tom and Rick back to back saying they've been let go. I said, well, let's do a podcast. And they went, that sounds great. We'll talk about it. And they we talked for many months, and finally about a year later, we finally got it started, which is, we started it, September of last year. So it's been going on just over a year now. Mm-hmm. It was Rick and Tom were both involved at the time. And the Times got behind it, which was kind of why it took so long, as Rick and Tom were trying to get them behind it.
Right.
They wanted the paper to be behind it as well, which that was fine. So we started a podcast, and the goal of the podcast was supposed to be Rick and Tom. I was just going to be the producer and, chime in where you need or whatever. And then about 6 months in, Tom decided he didn't want to pursue it anymore. I'm not 100% certain of the reason. I know that was one of the questions you wanted to ask me.
That is true.
I think it was the commitment to it. I think it was just he didn't want to be committed every night to doing this. Particularly if he, after a game wanted to go out and grab some wings or a beer or whatever else. I think that's the reason. But you'll notice he's on at least once a week almost.
Right.
He loves coming on, and Rick and Tom are so natural together.
Yeah.
It's weird, and it's funny because when I hired them back in 2012, the rule kind of in radio is, newspaper guys can kind of be deaf on the radio. Many of them are dry or boring, and they're great writers, but they're not great necessarily personalities. And, if you want to hire one, okay, but you put them with a co-host who's a radio guy, and, you kind of build a show, and you build the newspaper guy up. That's kind of the formula to it. And I remember, I asked several people for names and ideas, and, you always in your back of your mind have names and ideas if you have an opening who you might talk to or pursue. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, Rick was on my list. Tom wasn't. The Tom part of it actually is kind of funny. It's a funny story. And I told this the other day to some folks at the Times, and they didn't know it. So we let Dan Cilio go in February of 2012. And I won't get into all the details of that because it's personnel decisions and everything else. But it wasn't necessarily for the reasons that you think.
Okay.
Dan had made some comments on the radio. It was truly an innocent comment. Meant nothing by it. No one thought he meant anything by it, but it got written up in that. But that's not why we actually parted ways with Dan. But so Tom calls me the day it broke and asked me for comment, and I don't really give him one, but it's, I called him back and we talked. And then the next day we fired Dan. And so he calls again and asks for comment. And he's like, well, what are you going to do in mornings? And instead of really answering the question, because I didn't know, mm-hmm. I just kind of went, well, we're going to be posting up. Are you interested? It wasn't a serious question. It was really just to deflect the answer. So it was away from anything I might say about what we're going to do, or, mm-hmm. You just don't want him to quote you. So it's kind of to put it back on him. Hey, are you interested? We got an opening. He kind of laughed. No. Okay, great. Have a good night. Thanks. And a day or two later, he calls me back. He says, I was thinking about your question. I'm going, what question was that?
What are you talking about, Tom?
I might be interested in that. I was like, really? Okay. So we met and talked, and I had been talking to Rick. Rick was one of the guys in the market that I always said, hey, if I had an opening or something come up, I might, try to consider. I always liked his insight and what he's, I'd hear him on other radio shows or on the radio or see him on TV occasionally. And I always liked his presence and his knowledge. And so we started talking to both of them, and they decided, they were both interested, and I kind of liked both of them, but they didn't know I was talking to each other, the other one. Mm-hmm. And I would ask them, who are some people you think you could do a show with? And both of their names came up for the other ones at the top of the 2 or 3 people that they mentioned. I was like, that's interesting. Because they've been, you think of Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon,
right?
And they've been going back and forth in the Washington Post newsroom for 20 years. That TV show wasn't, they were just put together and found chemistry. They've been having those discussions for 20 years in the Washington Post newsroom before ESPN put them on the television.
Right.
Well, that's what Rick and Tom have been doing too. Mm-hmm. And they're good friends and that very different points of view and even different strengths on which sports they like and cover and that. So we put them in a room together, and I thought it was wonderful. But as, the idea came out that they might be the host, I had people in the industry who I respect greatly and might even consider mentors of mine tell me, don't hire 2 newspaper guys. You'll regret it. And I did it anyway. And 6 months later, they would call me going, I was wrong. You were right. Great hire. Those guys are fantastic in the morning. And why DAE let them go 2 years ago, I have no idea.
Yeah, because
to me, it didn't make much sense. Didn't
they just get their contract extended or signed a new contract, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, they just let them go? Is that accurate? Is that fair to say?
From what I understand, yeah, I think they had probably re-upped their contract 6 months prior to that.
Okay.
And I don't know the length of that contract, but, we hired them in May of 2012. So presumably their contracts would come up in May of whatever year it came up, depending on how long of a deal they sign each time. But more than likely that contract would come up in May. They were let go in October. So what's that, 5 months? Presumably I think it was 5 months earlier they had signed a contract yet.
Well, I'm one of those people who's lucky enough to have a job where I don't have to be up at the butt crack of dawn, but I would set my alarm to get up to listen to those 2 guys because, this is before apps were popular. I don't think iHeartRadio had an app. So, there was no this on demand and you couldn't catch it later. So, kudos to you because I'm glad you went against the grain there and hired those 2 newspapers guys because that was my favorite radio show, and I've been listening to 620 almost exclusively. I don't listen to I don't listen to radio. I listen to sports talk radio, and I've been listening to 620 exclusively back. Geez, I think before the Lightning were even a franchise. So, wow. To say that, yeah. So I mean, I'm
that would have been before DAE. Then that would have been back at the old 910 days.
Okay, then maybe right when the Lightning came around.
Okay,
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not from here, so I think that was right around the time. I think DAE started right around the time the Lightning did. So it's close to that time.
Yeah, it was real close. I remember when Steve Dumeg used to say on the air that he didn't know a lot about hockey, but he's trying to learn. Would say that on the air. And if you know anything, listen to Steve Dumeg, you know how out of character that would be.
That's extremely out of character
for that guy. So it's been a while. It's been a long time. But anyway, we have you on here to talk about the Buccaneers. So let's just get into it. I guess we'll start off on a sad note and we'll talk about Quan Alexander. I know you and Rick have discussed a little bit on your pod. Can you just, I'm just going to throw it out to you, your thoughts on the Quan and the whole situation about his contract and his up and down play and his best, probably half game I've ever seen him play. And now it's been a day or two sort of to think in. What are your thoughts on the Quan Alexander situation?
Well, first of all, on a personal note for him, I mean, regardless of contract year at all, I mean, these kind of injuries, and ACLs can be nasty injuries. You generally come back, but it's a long, arduous process. Like you said, he may have had his best half game ever as a pro in his career. He was playing phenomenally, despite the rest of the team. The first half, I guess they played okay. The second half was pretty shaky. And maybe Quan's injury was part of that, too, for the second half. You never, Dirk Cutter even mentioned how coming out of the locker room for the second half, Quan was coming out of the training room right there, and he addressed the team and talked to them. And, you know, when you're Mike linebacker, one of the heart and souls and one of the emotional guys on the team, you know, I mean, I think, you know, Gerald McCoy's a leader on that team, but I don't think he's in the same way that Quan Alexander is, or, you know, Levante David's kind of a quiet guy. Quan's more of a talker and more of a, probably an emotional type leader. And being the Mike linebacker and the defense, you know, that can really affect things. As far as his contract, it's, you know, hindsight's always 20/20, but you wonder, you know, what the Bucs have offered or what the conversations have been between, you know, Quan's camp and the Bucs as far as re-upping. And, you know, if there was an offer, if he turned down a really good offer, just hoping to really break the bank, or, you know, took that risk. It's going to be interesting. I mean, I you know, for Bucs fans, this may be a silver lining for the Bucs. They may have a better shot at re-signing him.
Yeah.
Because teams may not want to take a chance, and the Bucs know him, and we'll have more info on the medical reports throughout this season as he's rehabbing and that.
Sure.
You know, it may work out for the Bucs that way, but you know, regardless of that, it's you know, this defense is playing bad enough as it is this season, and to lose your Mike linebacker, it doesn't help anything. I mean, you know, I thought, you know, they looked better on Sunday, but you're also playing the Cleveland Browns, who, you know, has a good defense, but their offense isn't that good, and you know, we saw that in that game.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, Steve.
It'll be interesting with the contract for Quan.
Yeah, and let me ask, you know, if we could kind of play the what if game a little bit. You know, we have talked about on our show, and I don't have numbers in front of me to back this up, but you know, like, Quan is one of these guys, like, we've loved since the day he got drafted. You know, he was kind of that sneaky. He comes in, he was kind of supposed to be a backup. He's a fourth rounder. Next thing we know, he's the starting Mike linebacker, kind of taking over. And we've known him as this big fiery guy and this big defense. And it seems like this year, kind of, I think since about preseason, maybe game 1, game 2, a lot of us in the fandom anyway have kind of stepped back and gone, you know, is Quan really as good as we think he is? And kind of watching, like, you know, he misses on some gaps and misses in some of his angles and, you know, different things. So kind of going, what is this going to mean for his upcoming contract? But also, you know, like, and we've said on this show, like, really pulling for him to prove us right, like, to be that guy that we all at least think he can be or wanted him to be. And, you know, as you guys have both said, he was playing outstanding on Sunday, and want to see that go forward. But now with his injury, you know, what going forward, you know, we don't know what kind of the rest of the season Quan would have had. What would you do with Quan? Like, what do you think the Buccaneers are looking to do with him?
I think ultimately the Bucs will re-sign Quan. I think it'll be maybe a fairly sizable offer, maybe not quite as big as it would have been, but less guaranteed money. I think they'll make him earn it. I think a lot of teams may stay away from him, although there'll be a few that may make a run off the potential and seeing what he's done, knowing that, you know, they can't work him out at the free agent deadline in March. You know, he's not going to be able to go through the physical or pass the physical at that point because he'll still be, you know, going through the injury. So it may end up being a silver lining for the Bucs as far as long term, but short term it sucks, because you lost your quarterback of your defense, right, and maybe the emotional leader of your defense, or at least the rah-rah type guy in the defense. I mean, you know, we know Levante David's a pretty quiet guy. Gerald McCoy, fairly quiet, you know, leads more by example. And I think Quan's more of your, you know, the emotional leader, maybe.
Right. He's kind of the out front guy who's getting everybody going. So, yeah, it'll definitely be interested looking going forward. But I mean, I think you're absolutely right. The here and now, it definitely sucks, because I know the Buccaneers just today, as we record this, have signed a couple of new guys, and I think we're back to 6 guys. But I mean, none of these guys are another Quan Alexander. They're not a Kendall Beckwith or a Levante David, or, you know, these are. I mean, we hope they can be. We hope they can maybe turn into it, but, you know, probably they won't. So it'll be interesting to see what goes forward. And, you know, I was talking to Carmen Vitale, who works over at the Buccaneers, earlier today, and she was talking about how just before halftime, or just before the Bucs came out of the locker room at halftime, that Quan had kind of given them like a big emotional speech, and everybody was basically, I guess, all up in the fields, and I remember commenting and speaking with another podcaster, Derek Fournier over at What the Buck, and a couple other people of how the team overall looked a little flat coming out in the second half, and kind of maybe putting the pieces. Ren said on our show earlier this week that it's almost like they told everybody, "Hey, your dog just died. Now go out and play football." And that's kind of, I think, what happened. Ren, I know you were exaggerating there a little bit, but I think that might be a little bit. Quan, whatever his emotional thing was, to the team. I don't know if it was so much win one for the Gipper as much of a I'm going to miss you guys and I love you and whatever. But yeah. I mean, Quan, of all the injuries, I think Quan's possibly could hit the hardest.
Well, so, they came out flat in the second half because, we tend to forget sometimes that these players they're people just like you and I. They have bad days.
Steve,
they have wives or girlfriends or kids that, they're having a bad day because something didn't go right, or, they also have great days where the world seems to be going. I mean, yeah, they're no different. They're not machines. We tend to forget that sometimes.
They're not characters in a video game.
They perform at such a high level so often that sometimes you forget that things that happen off the field, or in this case, an injury on the field, but it's affecting one of their leaders, one of their friends, one of the guys that they're with, more than their family during the season, much like anybody at their job. I mean, you're with your coworkers more than you are your family for the most part. You tend to forget that. And not only that, but so you come out and your defense, which played pretty well in the first half, now all of a sudden doesn't have the guy with the headset on, doesn't have their quarterback for the second half, and they didn't play as well. And it's understandable. You'd like to think that everyone can just compartmentalize it and go out and play and like it never happened, but they're human.
Well, let's talk about a player that you mentioned that it didn't seem that the defense at least skipped a beat emotionally with, and I'm going to be talking about Gerald McCoy. There is I think a small but very vocal subsect of Buccaneer fans that always think he's overrated. And I think the hardest part for them to get by is, the year in, year out, 7 sacks, 33 tackles. And then you look at his contract. I know it's a very small sample size, but just being the one game against, like you said, in Cleveland's not a very good offense. But, it was the best the defense looked. They got to the quarterback. How do you think this defense handled not having Gerald McCoy there? And is Gerald McCoy, does he have a future with the Buccaneers that was as concrete as it was at the beginning of the season?
Look, I know that the minority out there that says Gerald McCoy is overrated. He is not overrated. But what he is not Warren Sapp, which is what those fans expect him to be. Mm-hmm. And because of the size of his contract, they think he has to be Warren Sapp. He's not. I mean, how many players in NFL history are Warren Sapp?
Nobody.
One.
I mean, he's a once-in-a-lifetime type player in that regard.
Right.
Gerald McCoy is a fantastic player, even better person, which maybe doesn't matter as much on the field. But, he's never going to be Warren Sapp. So stop trying to pretend he will be or comparing him, because he's not. But, in the past, the 7 sacks, and he's leading the team, and he shouldn't be from that position. He's had zero help. This year, he actually has some help on the D-line. They've had some injuries, too, which hasn't helped. Mm-hmm. But his job isn't to rack up the stats. That's not what that position does. They'll get some stats along the way. His job is to make it easier for everybody else. The beauty of Warren Sapp is, he had a lot of stats and was great, but he made Derek Brooks so much better behind him by what he did. And Derek Brooks is a Hall of Fame player, even without Warren Sapp in front of him. But he made Derek Brooks that much better, and the whole defense behind him. And I think Gerald McCoy, I think he makes the players around him better. Is he Warren Sapp? No. It never will be. And we should stop trying to compare him just because they wore the same uniform.
Well, let's stick with the defensive thing. Oh, by the way, well said, and wholeheartedly agree. And so does Brent. I know we've talked about it many times on the spot, unfortunately. Let's stick with the defense, and we'll move over to the new DC, Mark Duffner. The narrative was out there. I heard it on your podcast. I heard it on other podcasts. I think I disagree with a little bit. But now that Mike Smith's gone, not expecting to see, too much of a change because it's the same scheme, same players. Was it as simple as just, Mark Duffner's emotion and love for the game that got these guys to play so much better on Sunday?
I believe there's several factors in it. I think one, it was Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
You were facing a lesser offense than what you faced. I think playing at home helps. Making that move going into a home game probably made it a little easier. I think the emotion of the players in the crowd. I mean, look, once you replace the coaches, the players know they're next.
All right.
And so do they play, particularly the first week or two, maybe with a little more emotion, a little more attention to detail, maybe a little more focus? Because, look, if this organization gets rid of the coaches, then if that doesn't work, they're going to get rid of us. Mm-hmm. And, NFL players know their shelf life's pretty short in the NFL, unless you're, a Hall of Fame quarterback. That, your career doesn't go that long. So is there a little bit of a mental edge to it, too? Yes. And do I think Duffner's probably simplified some things on the defense? Probably. I mean, they don't talk about that or tell you. And I'm not the expert to, sit there and tell you for sure they did in comparing it. But, if I'm coming into a defense that's doing things that poorly, I'm going to simplify things. Okay, let's figure out the things we do well, and let's do those really well. One of the staples of Tony Dungy. Let's stop trying to do everything well. Let's find the 2 or 3 things, and let's do that really well, and then build off that. My guess is they have simplified some things, which help that too. But I think we're going to find out more. I think Cincinnati's offense is more dynamic than Cleveland's. Carolina, Cam's definitely more dynamic than Baker or Andy Dalton will be, so we'll see there. I don't know if their offense is, but their defense is really good. But I think in the coming weeks we'll find out more if really Duffner's change was a really big deal, or if not. I think we'll find out. But I also think you also heard the calls for Brenton Buckner to be the defensive coordinator, and there was a lot of fans that wanted him because he's a fiery guy, a likable guy, an up and coming guy in the coaching ranks, although, pretty new still. But I think going with the experienced guy in this case was probably the better fit. And the Bucs would know better than anyone. I mean, look, when you're putting a coaching staff together, you're thinking of a succession plan already if that stuff happens. So, you've got your defensive coordinator, but, who would take over if something happens to him, whether it's firing or, God forbid, something, health-wise or something happens. I mean, that's when you put together a staff, whether it's a football team or a business, you're always thinking succession plans in that. So, my guess is it was a no-brainer that they were going to Duffner. They knew that all along if something happened to Mike Smith. And maybe so far it looks like maybe it was the right move.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's definitely a wait and see on Duffner, but, probably the best start he, as fans that Brent and I are, I'm not going to lump you in there, could hope for. We were against we were anti-Buckner. He doesn't have enough experience.
Duffner was the better choice.
Duffner was, and the safer choice.
Think of it this way too. If you're Brenton Buckner, okay, the team's 2-3, defense is second worst in football, or worst, whatever stat you want to look at it. It's you're at the bottom couple teams in defense. The coaching staff could be short term. There could be wholesale changes happening at the end of this year. Do you really want your first defensive coordinator position to be 11 games to end the season here?
Yeah.
If I'm Buckner, I probably don't want that job at this point.
Yeah,
and not that he doesn't want to be a defensive coordinator, not that he doesn't want to be here, but you got to think your career too, and that's where Duffner's a safer hire for the Bucs too. Where he's been through the rigors, but he's also 65. If they clear house at the end of the year, and he's already been a defensive coordinator before, and he's got a stellar resume. Mm-hmm. It's not going to hurt him as much either. I mean, and from an organization, you want to help Buckner too. I mean, you care about your people. You want them to succeed. That if you're Buckner, do you really want that job this year? I mean, if you turn it around, you could be a hero. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But even if you turn it around, if they don't make the playoffs, there could be wholesale changes and you're out anyway. That's, to me, if I'm Buckner, I wouldn't have wanted that job.
Yeah.
And so by giving it to Duffner, you avoid that situation, which is a good thing for everyone, to be honest.
Yeah, agreed. I've always let me be totally honest here. I had no idea who you were until the Sports Day Tampa Bay pod started. And listening to you for the short time that it's been on, I've been thoroughly impressed by your overall sports knowledge on all the Rays teams, or excuse me, all Tampa Bay's teams. You're a type of guy that knows the Rays 40-man roster, their 90-man roster, their guys down in the minors that they're calling up. Switch over to the Lightning, you always have something to talk about players they have down at Syracuse, guys that got in the draft, where they're at. I mean, you could have a GM conversation with every single pro sports team in the Tampa Bay area. I think I would call myself, maybe a little pompously, an expert on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I would call you an expert on all three of those teams. Can you just tell us like where this come from? Like you mentioned earlier that, you weren't here, you were in another area. Like where did your love of sports come from, and how did you get your start? And where do you find the time to digest all this material?
How can we take your job? How can we become you, Steve, is what we really want to know.
Well, you have to remember, I mean, I was in radio for almost 20 years. And for most of that time, I was program directors of either news talk or sports talk or sports networks. So, I've been in markets, but for instance, when I got to Tampa Bay, so I ran WDAE for 2 years. So I'm working with the Bucs, with USF, with the Lightning, with the Rays. I know this. I mean, currently I sit in a booth every game for hockey games with Dave Mishkin and Phil Esposito. I get to hear hockey from those guys, not just on the air, but we talk about it off the air. When I go to Rays games, I'm with Dave Wills and Andy Freed. And if you want to talk about the minors and the 40-man roster, Neil Solondz knows more than anyone.
Yeah.
He may know more about their 40-man and 90-man and every minor league team than their front office does, to be honest.
That's so true.
No, it is. And it's a compliment to him. I mean, he loves it, breathes it. And that's what he loves to do. And he's really good at that. And he knows those guys inside and out. And he talks to the guys in the minors and that. And I get to talk to Neil all the time, as part, what I do now. So, I'm very lucky that I get a lot of insight. I mean, with the Bucs, I would sit in the booth with Gene Deckerhoff and Dave Moore and Jeff Ryan, who produces the Bucs radio broadcast. I mean, I've had a unique inside look at a lot of this, not only from a radio station and a media covering it perspective, which is what I've done for years, but I've also been a part of team broadcasts. Whether it's been in Cincinnati, I worked with the Reds and the Bengals and the Cincinnati Bearcats and Xavier Musketeers, to the Atlanta Braves in Atlanta. We had the Vikings when I was in Minnesota, Memphis Tigers when I was in Memphis. I've been all over where I've been working with teams. And so I think I kind of have a unique insight that I understand a lot more of the business side of it. So, I think I could probably come to things with a little more logical, less emotional view of things, because I know a lot of the inside guys and deal with them and know what goes into a lot of their decisions they make. So it's a unique perspective because of my career path and what I've done. And not only that, but working with hosts like Steve Dumig and Ron Diaz and Dan Cilio here in Tampa. Paul Feinbaum was on my staff when I was in Birmingham years ago.
Way.
Paul is a fantastic guy. Love him. And to be honest, he's very different off the air than on the air, which is funny. But he's a great guy. I mean, I've had a unique perspective to work with, so many different people, but you get a different insight because of who they are and stuff. I mean, in Atlanta, I worked with Skip Carey and Pete Van Wieren and Don Sutton and Joe Simpson. And in Cincinnati, it was with Marty Brenneman and Joe Nuxall.
Hey, there's some names I know.
Yeah, you know those guys?
Yeah,
well,
I mean, not personally, but I know
in the booth with them for 7 years.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, Brett jokingly at the end of my question said, "How do we become you?" And now that you just told me that story, how do I get your job? Just kidding. But this is the last one for me. It's not really a question. It's more of a thank you. Brent and I actually got to a couple of media day passes during training camp, and we got to go in the media room, and we have some relationships with Pewter Report and the Joe Bucks guys and Derek Forney. Like we talk, we've been on each other's pods and stuff, so we knew them. But one of the things I was really looking forward to was going up to Rick Stoud, who I've never met, only seen from the other side of the little yellow rope at Bucks training camp. Was that interview and it really wasn't an interview. So, I mean, I don't know how much accolades I can give, but the two-parter Andy Freed series, I guess you guys did. I mean, that man is a storyteller. And all basically Rick did was like, hey, Andy, baseball. And boom, he was off for like an hour and a half. And that was probably the most fun listen to a pod I've ever had in my life. So I just wanted to tip my hat. I don't know how much you had to do with it, but it was a good get. And really, really enjoyed listening to Andy, especially the early years. That first part was so enjoyable.
I can barely tell you what I had for dinner tonight. Andy can tell you what he ate for dinner and what the pitch count was on a game he was calling from the stands at age 16 in Baltimore.
Yes.
It's incredible.
Yes. Anyway, Brett, anything before we let give the information out on the interweb where everyone can find him?
No, Steve. I mean, I'll echo what Ren was saying here. Man, thanks for coming on the show. Glad to be your first podcast guest spot. I was very excited to, like I said, told you earlier, I was very excited to get you here on the podcast. Rick's great, but you have, through the podcast, you have, I think, gotten more on the radar of at least Buccaneer fans. I also would assume probably Lightning and Rays fans as well. It's almost like being, we know you, and we're glad to get to talk to you, in a different forum a little bit. So, man, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
I appreciate it. Anytime, guys.
Yeah, no problem. Why don't you go and tell everybody? Yeah, we probably will. Why don't you go and tell everybody, what you're doing on the pod, where they can find it, and anything else you want to talk about?
Well, if you just go to anywhere you get a podcast, search Sports Day Tampa Bay, you can find that, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Google Play. It's on Stitcher, TuneIn, SoundCloud, Spotify now. I'm sure there's other places I'm missing that it's up. But anywhere you get it, just do a search for Sports Day Tampa Bay. Twitter handles @SportsDayTB. Or, of course, it's always linked up at the Tampa Bay Times sports page, which is tampabay.com/sports.
And I'll tell you what, listeners, Steve is on it. Midnight, 12:05, that pod hits 5 days a week. I listen to it before I go to bed.
If we're done by then. Sometimes we're up till 1 or 2.
Well, that was Steve Versnik of the Sports Day Tampa Bay podcast. And Ren, really good get, man. That was a great conversation we just got to have with Steve there.
Thanks. Yeah, like I've said a few times, just listening to the pod, 5 days a week, I'm like, this is a guy that we can have a real good conversation with. And he didn't disappoint, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, coming off the backside of that, Ren, it is now time for you and I to dive a little bit deeper into the game and talk about our final thoughts on the game. We're going to grade out the game. But, Ren, we're going to do this a little bit different today. We've got a guest who is going to be joining us. I actually had planned on this guy joining us for the Instant Cast. But I would like to introduce everybody to my good friend, Wrestler Joe. Wrestler Joe, how's it going, my friend?
Hey, guys. Going well. Thank you guys for having me on.
Well, Joe actually is Joe. You are from
New York.
New York. He is from New York, so you guys could probably hear the accent there. But Joe is a big Cleveland Browns fan and came down this week to join me for the game. And so while we're going through, he's going to, I think, add maybe a little color commentary to maybe some of the things we have to say here. And
okay, wait. First off. Why do we have someone on here taking my show airtime away from me? And second, how the hell do you guys know each other? Like, Joe where are you from, Joe? I just happen to have this Cleveland Browns fan in my house that I've been housing for a week. And so we need a little backstory.
Okay. Well, first of all, Ren, I hate to tell you, after that music that you played on the Instant Cast, you are being fired.
Instant hit.
But no, Joe, Joe, tell him where we met, man, because you've got a little podcast here maybe you can plug as well.
Yes, I actually am a brand new co-host of a Harry Potter podcast called Tales from Godric's Hollow, and we met through the podcast community. Mm-hmm. We were both community members, actually, and then I just recently came on board as a co-host to that podcast, and he knew that I was a big Browns fan, and him being the Buccaneers fan, he invited me down, and I happily obliged. And so now we're here.
Yeah, and just so it's not as strange as it might sound, Joe and I have actually met before. The podcast, I actually get to do a little bit of producing for that show as well, in addition to my duties here with the Pewtercast. But we had kind of a meetup. A lot of people went to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter over in Orlando, and Joe came down for that. So, it's not just pulling a stranger and letting him come stay in my house with my kids and my wife that I've never known or met before. He's a pretty cool guy. So we've been hanging out, and he's like I said, he's just going to be joining us here for the show. And I think Joe and I have been talking a lot all week really since the game, and I think he's got a lot of great insight that might help us as we kind of dive through some of our final thoughts here tonight. So, I guess real quick before we go, if anybody wants to find that podcast, if you happen to have a dual fandom of not just the Buccaneers, but also you might like Harry Potter, tell us the premise of the show, Joe.
Okay, so we had this person, Josh, who had no idea anything about the Harry Potter world, and he went through it for the first time, the books and the movies, with another co-host, but that co-host left, so now we're on board and we're doing a reread. So we're currently in book 1, if you want to jump on board with us, and we're going through and we're kind of pointing out and connecting all the dots between the entire story from beginning to end. So it's a lot of fun if you're into the Wizarding World, and if you're into Harry Potter. We get into a lot of fun fanfic and a lot of theories and a bunch of different breakdowns of the story. So it's really cool.
Basically a bunch of grown men talking about a kid's book. That's really what it amounts to.
It sounds like it's the exact same thing we do here, except the subject matter is just Harry Potter instead of the Buccaneers.
It's very similar. Wait. Are you saying that I don't know anything about the Buccaneers, Ren? Is that am I the muggle of this show? Is that what you're saying? And you're the professor?
No, I don't know how. I mean, I'm not saying it. Maybe other people are, but but no, I'm saying that that it seems like a lot of theories and hypotheses. Like this could happen, and maybe that's because that's what we do with the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
It's what all the podcasts do about the Buccaneers. So
it's a good.
I get it.
It's a good show. So, Joe, just sit back and men chime in whenever. We're not going to be talking about the Browns, but like I said, I think as we go through our conversation, you might have some insight. So feel free to chime in wherever we go. So, Ren, let's get to the normal, kind of bulk of our show, the main part of our show. You and Gene had a great instant cast. Thank you to Gene, though, by the way, for coming on, and for you for kind of carrying the flag there while I was out of pocket. That was a sort of a last-minute little switch that we did there. But, Ren, I'll put it to you, man, here with a couple days thought, a couple days to think about it, maybe rewatch the game a little bit, watch some press conferences. What are your final thoughts coming out of this Bucs versus Browns game?
This is going to sound weird, but I thought Jameis Winston – I rewatched the game, and then I rewatched it right before we started recording. So it's been only about an hour since I rewatched it. Mm-hmm. And if you watch the condensed version on the NFL Game Pass, yes, it's the TV view. It's not the all-22 view, but it really gives you a feel of the game because it's one play after another, no commercial breaks, no halftime, no 30 seconds in between plays. And I thought Jameis Winston had a fantastic game.
Really?
Yeah, I really did. And we will talk about it. I am extremely upset about this narrative that has continued this week about Jameis Winston possibly not being a franchise quarterback, about his interceptions, about that he makes dumb decisions. I'm over it. Yeah. I'm so over it. I actually sent a voicemail to the commish for the Bucs Uncensored.
Whoa.
Yeah, because I want to get this out to as many ears as possible, and I'm sure we'll get into it. And that was my feeling before I rewatched it, and then I rewatched it, and it even strengthened it. I thought Jameis Winston had a fantastic game, but even overshadowing that is that defense, man. They were suffocating, and they really played. They really did. They played lights out.
Did they really? Because I admit I have not watched the game in that condensed version, and now I'm really interested to kind of go do it. So maybe to see what you're seeing, because I've only actually watched it just in the real time aspect of it, not even in the all-22, just the real-time piece. And kind of the thought that I had coming out of the instant cast and even coming through here is Jameis maybe didn't have his best day, but in no way, shape, or form am I ready to shuttle him off yet. Now, I also may not be ready to sit back and say he is the future of this franchise for the next 30 years. He might be. But
54 years old.
Right, because he's going to be that good, right? But I'm with you 100% on – I mean, it's almost to the point where it's annoying. Like, it's just annoying to listen to because social media has been ablaze with Jameis isn't a franchise quarterback. Jameis isn't, should never be re-signed. Let's go get a quarterback in this, the first round. I even saw one person, I'm not saying everybody's talking about. One person said we should tank the rest of the season so we can now try to get the first pick.
Was it Tom Jones?
That person shall go unnamed. But
it
was so ridiculous, like utterly ridiculous. And look, here's the deal. As far as Jameis and his interceptions go, and you had kind of asked the question to Gene on the instant cast. I thought it was a really great question of, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was is this just something we're going to have to live with? Sort of series of questions.
Yeah, are we going to have to live with Mike Evans dropping a ball a game?
Right.
Or are we just going to have to live with O.J. Howard dropping a pass a game?
Okay, let me tell you something I think we're going to have to live with. It's just a part of Jameis. We're going to have to live with 1 or 2 interceptions a game.
That's weird because he's never had like 16 in a year.
Did he have 18?
He's been close, but it's dropped every single year. And last year it was like 12.
Right, but he was also out for 3 games. So, if you do
he's been out for 3 and a half this one.
But that's what I mean. Like if we're going to get the high flying passing guy that Jameis is, interceptions are going to be a part of it, whether it's Jameis's fault or not. Right? Like it could be Donovan Smith or DeMar Dotson or probably Caleb Benenoch not doing their job, letting a guy come around and knocking a ball out of Jameis's hand from his blind side or something like that. It could be, somebody,
tip pass.
A tip pass. It could be a guy who it was a great ball thrown, but the guy bobbled it and then lost it, and the other, the guy picked it off, which still counts as an interception against Jameis. We're going to have to live with these kinds of things happening, and I don't think that they're out of control. And now to have 2 a game throughout the entire season, okay, maybe we could talk about that, but he's not going to be there.
He didn't have 2 a game. That's the thing. First off, to put a button on the defense thing once. They only gave up 21 points, and 2 of them were short fields, on their side. So that's pretty dominant. And when they needed to step up, they did. They got 2 3-and-outs in overtime.
Listen, if this defense holds every team to 21 points,
we should win every game.
Right now we're 6-0.
No,
is that right?
We didn't. No, not the Bears game.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we're 5-1. We hold everybody to. I mean,
we can't do that. But if we hold, if our defense hold people 21 points, we should win every game.
Right.
Now, if that happens or not. As far as Jameis, he brought him down. The guy should have made the kick, and the game would have been over, and Jameis would have had 1 pick.
Yeah, fair enough.
So it's like I said, we'll get into it a little bit about all the stuff I'm seeing that people seem to be not seeing or dismissing. As this is really good quarterback play, but I expect that from him because that's what he was in college, or that's what he's the number 1 pick, or that's what I expect from him. So it's almost like he can't win now. Mm-hmm. Any interception is my God, it's
and that's the thing, and that's where we talk about the idea that as Bucs fans we're so hyper focused on our guys, right? And every little mistake, every little thing that they do wrong gets so blown out of proportion and gets so blown out of the context of the NFL as a whole. You know what I mean? So I went back, and I remember last year kind of doing some of this research where we were talking about Jameis and how does he compare to other elite quarterbacks? And I don't have the number right in front of me, but what I generally found was the lowest number of interceptions in a quarterback's career was usually around the third year. And then after that, it bounced back up, and it stayed in around the 14, 15 interceptions a year mark. And
about
that's
one a game.
About one a game. And that's the quote unquote elite quarterbacks. Now you have to take Aaron Rodgers out of that because he's a freak and he doesn't go with any of the rest of the numbers. But when you look at a Dan Marino, a Brett Favre, a Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, dude up in New England, Tom Brady. Who's that guy on the Browns? Who's that Browns great quarter? Oh, I'm sorry, Joe. I apologize.
None.
Bernie.
Hopefully Baker soon enough.
Bernie Kosar.
Right. But I mean, my point being, if we're going to have a quarterback like Jameis, who is as high flying as he is, things are going to happen. And whether it's his fault or not, it's just going to happen. Now, Ren, I'm interested to know what you think about this.
Sure.
Because if I don't want to say that this worries me. That's not the right word. But the thing that kind of, as I was watching the game and looking back at it, I'm curious what you think, especially having watched the condensed version, that kind of got me a little, When the pressure got on at the end, like in OT and kind of like right at the end of the game, that's when I felt like we saw sort of the old Jameis coming back in. Like he was sailing balls really high. It's almost like he lost that calm demeanor that we've kind of come to know that he has, since last year. Like that's when I was a little like, okay, Jameis, calm down. Like, I wanted him to just bring it back. And it felt to me like Jameis was getting a lot more frazzled there through kind of that overtime, and even a little bit, I think, right there towards the end of the game. Did you sense that? Did you feel that at all?
No, absolutely not. The Jameis had 2 3-and-outs in the entire game. Pretty sure. Yeah. Had 2 3-and-outs. One happened to be in overtime.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, he threw that pick. And the other one was late in the fourth quarter. That was bracketed by a 7-minute touchdown drive to go up by 2 touchdowns, and the supposed game-winning drive if Katzar would have hit that field goal. So, no, I mean, Jameis refused to lose that game. Here's the thing about Jameis that I noticed from watching this game. No matter what the offense does, no matter what the defense does, no matter how bad they play, no matter how many penalties on offense, no matter how many interceptions or fumbles that he has, at the end of the game, with this offense, at the end of the game, he's going to give you a chance to win. He can overcome everything. Everything. And he makes big throws time after time after time. I mean, it's 2nd and 15 on that, quote unquote game-winning drive, non-overtime drive. And what does he do? He feels the pressure, rolls out, turns his shoulders, and fires the ball 21 yards down the field to Mike Evans for a first down.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the game is on the line in overtime. Took a really dumb sack. We get that. Then the sack right after that was not his fault. He barely even got his foot in the ground before he got trampled.
Mm-hmm.
And then what he does, he fires the ball across the line with a guy in his face. The ball probably went 45 yards in the air that hit Deshaun Jackson to put them in field goal range to win the game on 3rd and 50.
Right.
I mean, if he doesn't make that throw, the best we can hope for is a tie. And people are like, Jameis, he can overcome any mistake by this team right now. That's how good he is. And when the team starts making mistakes, stop making mistakes. That's when we're going to start seeing these games where instead of being up by 14 in the fourth quarter and then having to go to overtime, where it's going to be victory formation, we have a 10-point lead,
mm-hmm.
and it's coming. I'm telling you, it's coming.
I got to tell you, I love hearing that. I will say one other positive note about Jameis that I thought out of this game, and then I'll move on because I do want to talk about this defense and a couple of the other pieces before we get to our grades, is the one thing I'm really seeing from Jameis now, and I think if I look back on the Falcons game, I can't say the Bears game because that wasn't fair, but I hope to continue to see this out of Jameis. is it seems like what we are really starting to see is that idea that he is putting the team on his back and taking them to victory, or he's taking them down the field. Like it's something different than what we saw last year.
He won that game. He won that Cleveland game.
Yeah.
Like, just like Aaron Rodgers won that Chicago Bears game in week 1, when they were down by 20 at halftime. He won that game. Now, he did it from the lead most of the time, but every time Cleveland got close, he went down. They had to score a touchdown 3 times. Talk about Deshaun Jackson. He dropped him in the bucket. Deshaun Jackson let Denzel Ward strip it from him in the end zone. Then they hand the ball off to Peyton Barber, get a little closer, hand the ball to Peyton Barber. Well, penalty, holding Evan Smith. So now we scored twice, and they back him up. So James is like, okay, I'll just run it in from the 15.
I'll just do it myself. Right.
I'll do it myself. I'll pump fake the linebacker who's about to crush me to make him go back to Peyton Barber, leaves this gaping hole, and I'll just dive in. And it's like he was doing that like series after series after series. It was 2nd and 25. Okay, the Bucs had 3 turnovers on 3 times they had the ball. Jameis's first interception.
Uh-huh.
Then next time they had the ball, Cam Brate fumble.
Okay. Right. Then
they knelt it down for 1 play for halftime, not counting that as possession. They come out in the third quarter, gets the ball stripped from Garrett, comes around the end, beats Donovan Smith, gets 3 series in a row, and he still won the game. Still won the game. 4 turnovers to 1, and he won the game twice for you. Put you in field goal position twice.
Right.
What do you want?
I want a new quarterback, Ren. That's what I want, a new quarterback. No, listen, look, I mean, to what you're talking about there. Ren, I'll give you 3 guesses, but you're only going to need 1. Do you know who the leading rusher was for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in this game?
Carlos Hyde. Didn't we get him right before? When he traded?
He went to the other Florida team.
Oh, the Dolphins? The Bulls, USF Bulls.
The UCF Knights, national champions.
Did I? Don't. We should have brought that up to Versnik. He is like, him and Stroud are so like, they hate that so much, and as do I. But it was Jameis Winston, of course.
Yeah. I mean, at halftime, he was the leading rusher of the team, and he stayed leading rusher of the team. All right, so I think we are in agreement, Ren. The idea that Jameis Winston, isn't. See, you've got me convinced, because my note very clearly here says Jameis didn't have his best day. But I also say, but I'm not shuffling him off yet, like by any stretch of the imagination.
Gee, thanks, Brent.
No, but you've almost got me convinced the other way. Like I need to go back and look at this. I want to see the condensed version of the game. All right. Well, I think we can go home. I think this calls the podcast. I think we're done.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thanks
for coming.
It's
been lovely to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Okay, no, let's go over and talk about probably the other bright spot of the game, and that's the defense.
Mm-hmm.
And we can break down the defense in the different places, but I mean, let's talk about the defense as a whole. Now, this is kind of where my note, and you may come in and convince me otherwise, but I'll tell you what my note is, and then I'll let you try to do what you do. I think the defense had their best day yet for this year, but I'm not ready to crown them as the defense is fixed yet. I'm kind of in this wait and see mode with this new Duffner defense. Like, I want to see them repeat this next week, and then the week after. Like, I need to see more. I need to see consistency with this defense. But I definitely liked what I saw out of the defense. Now, the only other caveat I'll give to that, and Joe, you probably could speak to this a little bit. They were also playing a little bit of a beat up offense from the Browns.
That is correct. Yeah, we were really down at wide receiver.
Yeah.
We had 3 injured wide receivers coming into this game. So we still had our top 2, but we've also been struggling with drops, which has been very frustrating as a Browns fan. But yeah, they've been struggling as an offense in general in the first half. Coming into that game, in the previous 2 games before the Bucs game, they've only scored 12 points in the first half of the previous 2 games, and none of them were touchdowns. So one of the things that I was talking to you about was we needed to start off pretty hot. We needed to put some points on the board, and that was one thing they were not able to do, even still, against the Bucs. They only put up 2 points with the safety. It was the defense that scored them. It wasn't even the offense that scored them. Mm-hmm. So I knew the offense would be in a little bit of trouble going into this game. I was hoping Baker would get into a little bit of a rhythm. But the first half was not the place where that happened. That mostly happened in the second half when Baker was able to throw the ball a little bit more down the field. And that opened it up. Nick Chubb started getting going in the second half as well. And that's when they started going.
Also your center. You had a rookie. I think you were telling me you had a rookie left tackle. Your center was also – I mean, he was a guy that we talked about on our Buck in the News show last week as to whether he'd be able to go or not. But he went, but – still, we're dealing with. I mean, he's able to play, so he's got to play. But we're dealing with an injured center. So I say all of that to say, defense had a great game. I want to see them against maybe a more healthy offense. An offense that maybe puts up more points in the first half. I want to believe that this is a good defense. They certainly had their best game. But I just need to see more before I'm ready to be like, yeah, our defense is great. And by the way, we just took 2 big losses on the defense too.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's nothing really to sort of convince you. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and we just heard, Steve Versnik pretty much just ape the same thing. I'm not going to sit here and say the defense is back after, no offense, Joe, playing the Cleveland Browns with a rookie quarterback and beat up wide receivers and an inexperienced young offensive line at 2 very key positions. No, I'm not. I thought Nick Chubb looked awesome. After seeing Nick Chubb run, I'm like, okay, that's why you got rid of Carl Hyde. I get it. Do I think Baker Mayfield is going to be a player in the NFL? I do. I like everything about Baker Mayfield. He might be somebody, if they did, if the unthinkable happened and they got rid of Jameis, Baker would be one of the guys, in my top 5 that I'd want.
Really?
I just think he's a baller. I just think that when push comes to shove, he's going to make a play like he did. What was it like 2nd and 35, and he runs for a first down, and then gets in Whitehead's face about it. Remember that? His only scramble, Brent.
Is that how far it was? 2nd and 35.
Yeah, it was 2nd and 35, and I'm kind of watching. I'm going, I don't remember us getting the ball back here. I'm like, oh, that's right, that's right. Because it was. I think it was the it was the goal line stand by the Buccaneers. It was that drive.
Okay.
So no, obviously not. I think it's going to be an upgrade as far as key positions against the Bengals. But they call Andy Dalton the Red Rocket, but he's hot and cold. It's sort of been his MO throughout his career. He's been hot all the way through till last week, where he went looking back to Andy Dalton.
Right.
Which someone else I would not take instead of Jameis, by the way. But I think it's an upgraded talent at wide receiver. It's going to be a little bit interesting to see on the offensive side of ball. I know I'm sort of getting off the subject here, but how much O.J. Howard says, well, it's easier to go across the middle because we know we're not going to get hit. Well, the Bengals have Trevor Burfict, who has made a career out of getting fined for, killing people coming across the middle. So I'm interested to see how that happens. But to put a button on what you said, no, the defense isn't back. I need to see more. And I'm not even sure, we got Cleveland, then we got the Panthers. I don't think those offenses are good or anywhere near of the offenses we already faced, in the Falcons, in the Steelers, and in the Saints. So even after 2 more weeks, I still don't think, I can put my stamp of approval. I can say they're better.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to say that. And it's nothing against the Browns, because if Mike Smith was still defensive coordinator, I swear to God we lose that game.
I 100% agree with you.
The Browns offense doesn't get shut out in the first half. It would have been 21-19. We're losing going in at halftime.
Yeah. Because, this defense came out, at least in the first half, they were energetic. They were on fire. They were moving and shaking. I mean,
They were close to receivers.
Yeah. There were times when they were getting in Baker's face and shutting things down.
Guys were covered.
Now that being said, Joe, go ahead and say that.
The Browns are giving up the most sacks right now over any team. They have 31 sacks against them.
Right.
So their O-line has not been doing well.
Right. And to that effect, Will Golston gets his first sack of the season.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, who would have thought Will Golston would be playing and getting sacks this season?
I did.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? You thought? I mean,
before training camp started, yeah. Then I saw him at training camp. I was like, ew, he might not make
he's
the
not going to
team.
make the team. I was going to say, what are you
Yikes.
talking about? Because we were like, he's probably getting.
But
I mean, no.
But you can look at that stat both ways. Well,
Sure.
the Browns are giving up a lot of sacks. Okay, so you got a lot of sacks. But you know what? We weren't getting any sacks. It was JPP and nobody else.
Exactly.
So
exactly. Who all got sacks in this game?
You know what the defense did this week as far as sacking? They did their job. They did exactly what they were supposed to do.
Yeah.
Against the team that's giving up the most sacks, they went out and got 5.
There you go. There you go. Now let's talk about these turnovers, though. Talking about
The lack of, you mean?
right. Well, right now, Joe, you were telling me about the Browns and their turnover margin this year.
Turnover machines, those guys.
Yeah, the Browns have been leading the league in turnovers this year. Their defense has been really, really good, and Denzel Ward looks like a beast at cornerback.
Oh, don't say that. Oh, wait. Denzel Ward, not Derwin James. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So going into this game, the defense has been really stout, but they've been injury riddled.
Yeah.
So we were down our 2 middle linebackers. We were down Joe Schobert, who was the quarterback of our defense, and his backup, James Burgess, was also down. Our cornerbacks, Terrence Mitchell and E.J. Gaines, those two were down. So we had our second and third cornerbacks up in there.
They had a safety playing second there on the other side from Ward, because I thought it was going to be the rookie out of Ferris State. We talked about it, but I didn't notice. But during the broadcast, which I was watching, they mentioned it several times that like the third safety, somebody who had played corner previous in the NFL but had been playing safety for the Browns, they moved him to the opposite side, or wherever Ward was moving, the opposite side of him. So yeah, their secondary and the defense, the middle of their defense was banged up, man.
Yeah. So that's to say, the turnover margin, would we go 4-1 or something like that? 5-1 in the turnover
4-1.
margin, 4-1,
5-2, I think.
5-2.
Yeah, the special teams one, Jabril Peppers.
Okay, but whatever it is, I've seen a lot of people freaking out about the turnover margin and giving things up. This, I guess, kind of goes back to our offense. Listen, I'm not freaking out about it. I mean, the Browns are leading the league in creating turnovers. That Cam Brate fumble sucks that happened, but I mean, that was like Cam Brate was holding the ball where he needed to hold it. Probably could have had his second arm over top of it, protecting it a little bit more. I don't know, given the angle that it took place, but I mean, I forget who created that fumble, but that was just a good play on the part of the defense. To come in and punch that. I mean, they literally. Cam Brate was going to the ground, and he comes in and punches that ball out. Like,
it wasn't an accident.
Yeah.
It was like he came in, like zeroed in on the ball, and that's what the Browns do, man.
Yeah.
I mean, congratulate the Browns for and they almost had one on Adam Humphries, which it wouldn't have mattered because Adam Humphries actually got it back. But Myles Garrett off the edge, had created a fumble and that punch out. I mean, that's what the Browns do, and that's how they've been staying close and winning some of these games is off their turnover defense.
Yeah.
Just like the Bucs did in 2016, we went on that 5-game win streak.
There you go.
We weren't very good, but we were winning the turnover battle.
Right. Okay. So there's that. I had down as a note, but we talked about it with Versnik about the Bucs coming out flat in the second half, and they really did, I think, look flat in the second half. But I think it makes a whole lot of sense that had more to do with Quan and kind of I think I like your point of it's like we told you just killed your dog. Now go play football.
Go get him, boys.
Yeah,
go get him, boys.
It's
What?
hey, the heart and soul of your defense is out for the year. Peace out, guys. I love you. Like, okay, well, shoot. But here's, I think, the bigger question, Ren, and we could probably talk about this maybe a little bit more on Buck in the News and going forward. But, with Quan now injured, all right, Jack Sitchie, okay, he was a special teams guy. It's not that big of a loss. Quan is a big loss. Vernon Hargraves we have felt his absence. Mitch Unrein hasn't even stepped on the field. Vita Vea, we didn't even have him until just a couple of weeks ago. Gerald McCoy is now out, who, by the way, I agree with you. It didn't feel like this team missed him all that much. Although I would be interested to kind of, if we could play alternate universe, what would have happened if Gerald had been playing this week.
Right? Could have been more sacks.
Yeah.
Maybe Cleveland doesn't get back in the game because they can't run the ball up the middle as much as they wanted to in the second half.
Yeah.
That's a hard balance between how much of it was Quan and how much of it was missing Gerald.
Right.
That it was really hard.
Right. Or did we even miss Gerald? I mean, because you have that idea. Because as you said, the defense, we both said defense had their best day. They actually looked really good. You said earlier that the defense played lights out, and we did it without a Gerald McCoy. Now, that said, also credit Jason Light, our general manager, who there are a lot of fans out there who are looking to get rid of as well, for creating a defensive line that as I've said numerous times, it's almost like it's injury proof.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this Quan injury, though, I don't know that we have a good, solid plan for this. Like, this one for the first time worries me.
Right, because, like you said, we have felt Vernon's absence in the secondary, but that was mostly off of, hey, he looked really good. It finally felt like he was turning the corner.
Right.
We didn't get a big enough sample size of him actually being who we've all hoped he would be since we drafted him, 2.5 years ago now.
Right.
So, I've been talking about a Darius Glanton who has changed his name to a Darius Taylor since I've been on this podcast, but how much I like this guy. All he does is make plays and make tackles, got a sack.
Team captain of Darius Taylor.
I mean, so we're going to see. The small sample size we saw in the second half didn't look good, but I think Nick Chubb is a really good back. It's funny, like, about 5 years ago, there wasn't really any good backs in the NFL. Now it's like everybody's got one.
Yeah.
Except us. I mean, there's a lot of top-tier backs out there, and I think Chubb won. I think his running mate at Georgia, Sony Michel's one, Ezekiel Elliott, Todd Gurley, Hunt.
Rojo? Come on, Ren.
I think Rojo's really athletic. You can see it when they get him the ball.
Yeah.
They just haven't got him the ball enough. And if it's a thing, and if it comes out that he's the one who ran the wrong route that led the linebacker into Jameis's overtime interception, then you can see why they're not putting him in yet as a lot, because if you can't run, you don't know the playbook. You don't know the playbook.
Right.
So I don't know exactly how much of that sample size was a Darius Taylor, adjusting to position, not knowing what he was doing, not as good as Quan, and then add on that I think Nick Chubb's really good. Throw all that in there. But we shall see. I have gone on this pod and said that I think linebacker is the most overrated position on the defensive side of the ball. They're just athletes that tweeners are too slow to cover and not big enough to stop the run by themselves on the defensive line. And you can find 250-pound, 200, 185-pound athletes that can run 4.6s everywhere. Everywhere you can find them.
Ooh, I just had an idea. Ren,
What's that?
You're going to tell me that I'm absolutely crazy for saying this.
Don't say Noah Spence at linebacker.
All right, so moving on.
Okay.
We got to use him somewhere. We got to figure something out with this guy. Come on, man.
He was only in a handful of plays, and I haven't gone through them all, but, I saw him a couple times. Like, during the game, I didn't see him at all.
Yeah.
But if Nassib didn't get his first sack, it was going to be Noah Spence.
Right.
Like, he was right there as well. So
there were things with Noah Spence that what he did was he created, like, there was one spot I think he allowed for, was it JPP to get a sack? Like there was twice in the game that because of what he was doing on his side, it allowed for somebody else to get the sack. So
they were running a game or a stunt or
yeah. So I mean, he was there. He had an impact. I haven't seen the snap count breakdown or anything yet to know
under
exactly.
10.
Is it under 10?
Yeah, like 9.
Yeah. So, I don't know. We got to figure out something. But, I mean, I don't know. Maybe we go to a 5-2.
Why? It worked. What are you talking about 5-2? Just to get Spence on the field?
No, I'm not talking about Spence. I'm talking no. What I mean is without Quan, okay? Because who are we now talking about? We've got Adarius and we've got Levante. Great. Riley Bulla?
Bond. You got Bond and Beckwith next week, hopefully.
Hopefully Beckwith. Gosh, we need Beckwith back. That'd be great.
Yeah, that would be great.
Bond, and I'm not crazy about Bond, but having Beckwith would make me a whole lot more,
Fourth down goal line stand hero, Devontae Bond. He's the one who grabbed Baker Mayfield. And not only did he grab him,
yeah.
I know listeners can't see this, but he came on the side and grabbed Baker Mayfield, and then he turned him. So Bond turned him so his back was on the goal line.
Uh-huh.
So when Nick Chubb came up behind Baker Mayfield to push, he had to push Baker Mayfield through Bond, and he couldn't. He stoned him. Now, if he would have just grabbed him and kept him sideways, and Baker Mayfield come and sort of hit Bond on his side, I think they would have maybe fallen through the end zone. So not only did he get there, he made a really smart play in spinning him and then stoning him and waiting for help.
Interesting. Yeah, okay. I'm going to have to go back and look at that because maybe I'm being too hard on Devontae Bond.
No, he's been a disappointment. He can't stay healthy, and apparently, according to you, he's got a sissy disease.
It's a condition. A
sissy condition.
It's a condition.
That shouldn't keep you out of NFL games, let alone going to the grocery store.
All right. Well, two more things that I have final thoughts on. But one, don't want to talk about this one first. No, I'm going to talk about something else before I get because the kicker is going to be the last thing that I want to talk about. And if you have anything else, I'm glad for it.
Sure.
But all due respect to Gene, our guy who, our friend Gene. Love him. I love his takes on the Buccaneers. But I'm going to disagree with him on something. And I think it might just be more of a verbiage thing. But I'm sorry, but the idea that we're giving guys a shot, and I'm seeing this not just with Gene. I've seen a lot of people say, hey, let's put Alex Kappa in and give him a shot and see what he can do. Let's send the kicker back out there, even though he's just missed 2, and give him a shot at redeeming himself. Let's go give these guys a shot. And I was thinking about this in watching this game. You don't give guys a shot in the game. Like, that's not how football works. Right? This isn't Madden. We're not like, hey, let me put this guy in here and just push some buttons and see what happens. Let's give it a shot. That's not how this works. I was thinking back to like football culture, like when I played football. Now, granted, it was high school, okay? But as far as I can tell, it really surprises me how much professional football still seems a lot like high school football, like in feel and culture and how they operate. You do that stuff in practice. And that's what we saw in training camp, right? Like we saw Alex Kappa running with the ones a little bit in training camp. Mm-hmm. But, here's the deal. Kendall Beckwith, he's a 5th-round pick. Alex Kappa's a 3rd-round pick. Kendall Beckwith, though, is also coming with, what is this now, Ren? 4 years of experience?
Who are we talking about?
Not Beckwith. Beninock.
Beninock?
Yeah, Beninock. This 3rd year? 3rd, 4th year?
He came in with Ryan Smith, so this would be his
3rd year? Ryan Smith was the year that I started. Yeah, Beninock. So this would be their 3rd season.
Right, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You give – by default, you go with the guy who has the most seniority. Unless the younger guy comes in and beats you out. But when you get beat out is in practice. So
in training camp.
And in training camp. So if Alex Kappa is not beating out, is not better than Caleb Beninock in practice – they're not going to try him out and give him a shot in a game when everything actually counts. So I'm all. I want to see Alex Kappa. I would love to see Alex Kappa, but I have to question what he's doing in practice because I'm all for it. I mean, you asked the question. I'm right there with you. What are we going to do with Caleb Beninock? I mean, because it's not okay.
No, it's not okay.
But if what we're looking at with Caleb Beninock and this offensive line, if he really is that best option at right guard, and what this whole rotating thing, when Evan Smith got that holding penalty that negated that, did it negate a touchdown or the Deshaun Jackson touchdown? I literally screamed. I was like, "What's Evan Smith doing in the game?"
Well, it'll make you feel better that it actually wasn't a hold.
It wasn't. It was a bad call.
He tossed his guy. Like what he did. Like he had him, and then he just flipped him, and they called a hold on him.
Oh,
like he just did one of those things. Normally these are like highlights where it's like, hey, watch this guard just like toss, the defensive tackle. That's what he did. They called for holding,
and it negated a touchdown.
But we got it anyway. That was the drive. That was the drive where the Bucs scored 3 times. Touchdown to Sean Jackson, strip. Barber up the middle, touchdown.
Yeah.
Holding penalty that play, and then Jameis ran it in.
We had to score 3 times.
We had to score 3. We did score 3 times. We scored 3 times on one drive.
Yeah, but I'm just saying this idea.
Yeah, what's the question? Is there a question in here?
No,
somewhere?
it's not a question. I'm making a point here on my podcast.
Okay.
Of this idea of giving people a shot. Let's put Rojo in there and give him a shot and see what he can do. That's not what we do in football. I need to, now I want to know what they're doing in practice, but it's something that I've seen more and more and more so this week. And you don't do that in a game. You don't just give somebody a shot. Okay, now that said, let's talk about this kicker.
No, wait.
Okay. No, go ahead. Yeah. If you got something you want to talk about, go ahead.
One, I agree with you. This isn't baseball where you stick a guy at second base and hope that only gets 2 balls hit to him and he gets up, up to bat 4 times. Like in football, you're active, you're good, you're in every play, and if you're on defense, they're going to find you and come after you, and if you're on offense, they're going to find you and come after you. So, it's not just give him a shot. But I also think the Bucs are very slow to make change.
They are. Yes.
We could talk about last year with Doug Martin finally going to Peyton Barber after it was so painfully obvious that Doug Martin was done, at least behind that offensive line, running the ball. We could talk about I had a couple more. I'm sorry.
Mike Smith needing to be fired. It took them forever.
No, but there's players where you're like where are they? Yeah. And it always feels like it takes a week or 2 longer. You could bring in Rojo. I don't think Carlton Davis would have been starting if it wasn't for these injuries. MJ Stewart wouldn't be starting if it wasn't for these injuries. So it's with Alex Kappa finally replacing Caleb Benenoch, which is going to happen sooner than later. One, Dirk Cutter has said that it's really hard to climb the depth chart in practice because that's what training camp's for.
Right.
You don't get a lot of reps. You don't get a lot of practice time during the week, blah, blah, blah. 2, how bad does Alex Kappa have to look in practice not to replace Benenoch? Because he is terrible. We thought okay, he'll be able to run block. And then pass block, he's a guard now, so it'll be like more of this fighting in a phone booth, and he'll have help on both sides. Ryan Jensen will help him out, and we'll get by, and he'll grow as the year goes along. Well, it's not happening.
Right.
He looks out of shape, and he looks lazy, and it looks like he doesn't care.
Benenoch does.
Benenoch. So so then you think, well, how bad is Alex Kappa? I mean, I understand he's a Division 3, not Division 2. He's a Division 3 guy.
Yeah.
But they traded up to the 3rd round to get him.
Right. Because he looked great at the Senior Bowl thing?
Senior Bowl. It took a day to adjust, like Ali Marpet when he was Division 2. It took a day to adjust, and then he's like, okay, I can play, and started bulldozing guys.
Right.
Well, so I don't know if it's that Kappa isn't impressing enough or they're just so slow to change. At the very least, with this rotation they're doing with Benenoch and Evan Smith, just flip the percentages.
Yeah.
Because it's like 75% Benenoch, 25% Smith. Just flip them.
Yeah.
If you don't want to bring Kappa up and play, at least flip him because Benenoch is costing this offensive drives, and eventually it's going to cost you games.
Yeah, and the hard part about that is you only activate 7 offensive linemen on a game day. And if you're going to have Leonard Wester as an active guy to back up your tackles. You have to have that. So you only have one guy, one spot to bring in for an extra offensive lineman, and that's going to be Evan Smith, who is versatile enough to play anywhere across the interior of the line.
Right.
And as long as Evan Smith is on this team, so maybe we don't even need to blame Benenoch. Maybe we should blame Evan Smith. It's his fault. Because as long as Evan Smith is here and he's getting dressed, Kappa's just not dressing. Like, there's just not enough space for them. Unless we're going to sit, I don't know, Jaquiz And sit Bennett, yeah, if we're going to give him a shot, right? Anyway, yes.
Something has to change.
I agree.
And if you want to make Evan Smith a full-time starter and then activate Kappa
and deactivate Beninock,
to give him a boot in his butt, then do it.
Yeah.
Like, look,
but
I
that's
don't know
only
the
what I'm
ins and
saying
outs.
is that's only going to happen in practice. Like Kappa has to step up and challenge these guys and prove that he is the guy. Beninock just really needs to lose it. I mean, that could also happen.
Beninock can't lose it anymore. What needs to happen is Kappa needs to shiv him in the water pool. That's what needs to happen.
So if anybody would like to send Alex Kappa a package in the mail, you go to One Buccaneer Place.
I cannot believe we're condoning stabbings in the locker room.
We do not condone shankings here at the Pewtercast.
No shivs in the shower.
The address is One Buccaneer Place, Tampa, Florida, 33628. I don't know if that's actually the zip code or not. All right, anyway.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about this kicker, Ren. All right.
Sure.
Chandler can't kick Canzaro, can kick Canzaro. Chandler Catanzaro. Chandler
Dog Canzaro.
Dog Canzaro.
Chandler Bing.
He didn't. I hate that. I hate the idea. He came out and redeemed himself.
Okay, here's my take. You look like you're trailing. I don't care. I don't care. You keep him. I don't care. Cut him. I don't care. Like, do I think he can still make kicks? Yeah. Do I think he's done enough to be fired? Yeah. Like, I don't care. Just go out and get Santos, the guy that the Rams cut to fill in for their kicker. Now it's back. Just go get him. Like, I don't. Just like I don't want to talk about Jameis Winston not being a franchise quarterback, I don't want to have conversations about kickers. I don't care what you do. I don't care about his family. I don't care about his golf game. I don't care about his wife or his kids. You had your shot. You blew it. You're lucky you have a job.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
you're lucky you got that 60-yarder or 59-yarder or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great kick. Don't get me wrong, but it never should have come to that. I can make a 40-yard kick. I can. Now, I'll probably blow up my hammy. Doing it.
You're going to look like Matt Bryant at the end of that 40-yard kick.
I'll be like at a full body cast, but I can make it. So, I mean, 40-yard kick is not that far. We've seen it in practice.
Right. Like,
you go there and people are like, 40-yard, looks so far on TV. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. Just, okay, imagine this. Imagine being 40 yards off the green on a golf course. You know how close you are to the green? There's not a club in your bag that you can even hit 1/4 that's not going to fly it. Like, it's not. 40 yards isn't that far. It's really not. And you're getting paid $3 million a year to make it. Cut him. Don't give a shit. Keep him. Don't give a shit. Just make your kicks, man. Just make your kicks.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. I don't want to talk about the kicker. I want to talk about the play call for sending the kicker out, though.
Which time?
Both times because the first time, for both times. So there's the one at the end of regulation, where there was 40 seconds left on the clock or
40,
something
45,
like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a 40-yard. Do you kick? Is that the right play call on third down? Not fourth, by the way. Third down to go ahead and run out the clock and try to kick this field goal and put the game away and win.
Yes. Here's the reason why. The guy's being paid me $3 million a year, and it's a 40-yard goddamn field goal. Okay, so you ran the ball once with Jacquizz Rodgers. Okay, no big deal. Okay, you could have ran it to Jacquizz Rodgers twice and just have him go what Jameis did, like get on the hash and go straight ahead. Don't variate. If you end up scoring, great. If you end up getting 10 yards, great. You end up getting 1 yard, no problem. You know why? Because the kicker's coming in. If Jameis throws the ball and he throws a pick, or if or Jameis throws ball and the guy gets it punched out by Denzel Ward again, and then you don't have a shot to make that field goal, how stupid are you now? It's a 40-yard field goal. It's 7 yards further back than an extra point. I don't understand these people are like, you're not aggressive. You're not thinking. No, what you're doing is not being freaking stupid and bringing in turnovers into play and trusting the guy whose one job is to make a kick.
Yeah. And by the way, there was a stat that I saw that go.
Am I yelling a lot? I feel like I'm yelling a lot.
Yeah, because this is yes, because we're so happy we won, Ren. That's
Right?
what it is. We're celebrating a Buccaneers victory.
Not me.
Hello, Joe. Welcome back to the show.
I love your kicker. Your kicker kept us in the game.
All until the very end.
Yes.
And actually, I'm coming back to Joe because I want to get his take on that final kick. I want us as Bucs fans I want to end this by reveling in that final kick one more time for winning the game. But 92%, Ren, 92% is the percentage that people make field goals at the range that Chandler Catanzaro tried that kick.
Right.
Even the most simple paint by numbers guys looks at that stat and looks at that statistic, which, by the way, Dirk Cutter has, because Dirk Cutter is a paint by numbers kind of a guy, and goes, 92%, I'm kicking right here. And you're absolutely right. We're not going to risk an interception. We're not going to risk a fumble. We're not going to risk that. He should go out there. He should be able to make this kick with no problem. And we're going to win this game, and we're going to go home.
Yeah, it's the same thing as like why he kicks it into the end zone. It's like, okay, you could do this mortar kick and have it drop down on the goal line or the 1 or the 2, but then guess what comes into play? A big return for a touchdown.
Right.
If you kick it out of the back of the end zone, okay, maybe they get the ball 10 yards closer, but you had to have a really great play to tackle them at the 15.
Right.
You're usually probably going to tackle them somewhere between the 20 and 25, right. So you save yourself like 2-3 yards, but you know what you do? You know what you take out of play? Giving up a touchdown. And that's the exact same thinking. It was for those people who are like, oh, that's loser mentality. You're crazy. You're crazy.
It's a loser mentality to try to win the game.
No, loser mentality by not trying to get closer. It's like, you should have got closer because if you were closer, he would have made it. It's like, really?
No.
How about you had to get it within, like you get it at least 7 yards closer because he clanked a freaking extra point. And that as soon as it left his foot, had no chance of going in at any range.
Yeah.
So I don't get it. Like, oh, you weren't aggressive. You didn't have to. The game is over.
Right.
There's 7 seconds left. You're lining up for a 40-yard field goal. Like, pack the equipment up. We're leaving.
That's how you write the end of a game, right?
Yeah.
Score is tied, or you're down by 2, or you're down by 1, or whatever. It's get your offense. You don't go 75 yards down the field. You go 50. Right? You 45, 50 yards down the field, kick a field goal, win the game, and go home. That's what you do. Okay. That's all the final thoughts I have, Ren. As we turn to grades, do you have anything else?
Has this been such a weird week, though?
It has. Hey, can I remind you of something? We won the freaking game.
I know.
Sorry,
and we're not
Joe.
mad. And we're not mad at the players. We're not mad. It's like, I'm mad at these fucking fans on goddamn social media. Like, I am over it, man. Yeah. I am over it. Like, that's who I'm yelling at. I'm not yelling at Cutter. I'm not yelling at the defense. I'm not yelling at Jameis. We won the game where we turned the ball over 4 times and the quarterback put us in winning field goal position twice. You know what happened after the safety? You know what Jameis did? Field goal, touchdown. First 3 times he really touches the ball because he only got it like for 2 plays last time.
Yeah.
He comes out there, goes field goal, touchdown. We're up we would have been up 17, but hey, we don't have a kicker, so we're only up 16-2.
Right.
It's midway through the second quarter. The guys touched the ball 3 times and he scored 3 times. Like, what the fuck do you want?
Yes. Ren has solidly given us our R rating for today's episode. All right, Joe, we're going to round out the show. I want to thank you for being on with us today.
Yeah, no problem.
Tales from Godric's Hollow. I
may edit this. Grades?
We got to do grades. Before we get to grades, thank you so much. But before we move on to grades, Joe, from your perspective, take us through
the agony,
moment by moment, that final little bit of the game. What did you see? What was going on around us? Because because people should know my seats are in the east side, which is behind the visitors bench, which means I'm surrounded by Cleveland Browns fans. Like, it's Cleveland Browns fan and me is a Bucs fan. So,
yeah. So first off, we're used to this. The emotional roller coaster of the end of games. Now, just this year, we have 4 overtime games.
That's crazy.
This being one of
Yeah.
them. We're only 7 games into the season.
Which, okay, you had a stat earlier. One more overtime game this season, and the Browns take the record for most overtime games in the season.
Correct. It's an NFL record. If we get to 5.
Right. So you're used to this feeling.
Right. And
Yes.
which is like heart palpitations.
Right.
You know, I'm about to have a heart attack. I'm losing years off my life being a Browns fan. So anyway, here we go again. We've seen this before. And here we go. And we spoke about this how many times did the ball change hands?
The ball,
It was like
this?
5 or 6 possessions where it went back and
what?
forth and back and
In
forth.
overtime.
In overtime alone.
Browns had 3. We had 2.
So it changed.
No. Wait. We had 3. Browns had 3. 6.
Yeah.
Right. If you count the punt return that got immediately fumbled back to you guys, it's 6.
That counts. Yeah, it's 6.
So
That's a lot of changing hands in an overtime.
Yeah, well, they got the kick, and then
Yeah.
3 and out, and then Jameis threw the pick, 3 and out. Then Jameis didn't move the team, our 3 and out, and then the fumble, and that was it. And then we got the ball and scored.
right. So setting up now for the final kick, and I was watching this, and I didn't think he was going to make it. Especially, I felt like his confidence was probably going to be a little hurt.
Yeah.
A 59-yarder, it's a hard kick to make, even though professional kickers should make that kick anyway. But he just hasn't had that luck this game. It seemed like he was in a little bit of a funk. So I was just like, okay, Browns are going to get the ball back one more time. Hopefully we can finally score and put this game away. Because we did need this game. And I was watching the players as the kick was happening. And the players looked like that they thought that there was no way this kicker was going to make this kick.
Yeah.
It just seemed like they were just kind of standing there. Some of them were jumping, waving their hands a little bit. But I didn't really see any kind of an aggression to try to either block it or to try to really jump because the trajectory of the kick was very low.
Low. I don't know if you guys could tell at home. That ball did not look like it was going to cross the crossbar at all in the stadium.
It did on TV.
It did. It didn't.
What it looked like, it looked like it was like 5 yards wide. And then
really?
about the 15-yard line, it started to hook. Oh, yeah. Like, as soon as it hit his foot,
Yeah.
I'm like, he missed it.
Yeah.
And then
No.
he had – and I think that's why he missed the 40
Yeah.
because it wasn't far enough away for the hook to start.
He's a bowler. He's got to have that hook in the end.
It's got to be from 60. He'll nail him every time because he started it, way out there.
Because, and that ball crossed where we were sitting. Like, it wasn't the other side of the field. Like, it was right in front of our seats. And that ball was going, and I'm watching it, and you're probably thinking the same thing, right, Joe? Like, it's just going to fall. It's going to fall in the end zone.
Yeah, I didn't think it was going to be short, but I was hoping it was going to be wide just looking at it. But I was also hoping that the Browns players would jump a little higher and try to get a hand on the ball to block the ball. And because that would have put us at the 50 to try to get in or possibly kick a field goal ourselves. And I was watching the refs because from our angle, we can't see if it goes through or not.
Right.
So I'm watching the refs. There was a slight delay, and then all of a sudden they put the hands up that it was good. And I was just like, son of a gun. Like, he misses the 40-yarder, and he misses an extra point, but he hits a 59, 60-yarder kick, and of course the Browns would lose that way.
See, and I was sitting there going, son of a gun, he made it. It was odd. I think I had the same reaction. Like,
Wow, he made it. I didn't think that was going to happen.
who knew? All right.
I actually have a question for Joe, and I've said many times on this podcast how I like what the Browns are doing. Like, they tore the organization down to the studs, collected these draft picks. It seems like they hit on their 2 first-round picks. I know people are like, Denzel Ward, 4 too high. Well, your next pick's not till like 33, and guess what? Denzel Ward's not going to be there. So if he's your guy, get him. Njoku looks like he's a player. Peppers, you could probably play him anywhere on defense if you want to. Your defensive line's monster. I know you're hurt at linebacker, but that chauffeur guy, I think he made the Pro Bowl last year. EJ Gaines was your other corner.
Yeah.
I've heard of him. He's got some skills. So now you got Chubb, you got Jarvis Landry, you got the quarterback. Like, how are you, are you finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, or are you more like prove it, or is it like Hugh Jackson's got to go? This team's never going to do anything.
I'm an eternal optimist, so I believe that the Browns have definitely turned that corner right now, but at the same time, they're losing a lot of close games still, which has been the previous year's problem. So I think there's going to be a coaching change. I think Hugh Jackson will be done by the end of this year. But do I see the light? Absolutely. I think Baker is a player. I think he's going to be really, really good, and he's only going to get better. I think as we get more wide receivers, because now we have our running back set, we have Jarvis Landry. If Antonio Callaway, if he can continue to grow, because he's a rookie himself,
Right.
Because he has that breakout speed where if he gets past the defense, he's off and running, and no one's going to catch him.
Yeah, you guys got you traded Josh Gordon and then drafted Josh Gordon.
Well, he's been fine. He had that one hiccup with the weed thing that wasn't his, but it was in the car and whatever that was. But he didn't get charged anything for that, thankfully. But we have Rashard Higgins, who's finally coming in, and he's been a really great player for us. He's one of the wide receivers that got injured, that was not playing against the Bucs. But if he comes back healthy, I think we have something going. And once we start gelling as an offense, I think we're going to be really good. Our defense is already really good. So now we just got to get the offense up to par with that.
Well, as a lifelong Bucs fan, I feel for you, man. Like, I went through 5 years of 4-12 or worse. So, I lived in Florida, and I would get laughed at by other kids in high school because I was a Buccaneers fan. Living in St. Petersburg, it's a 30-minute drive to the stadium, and people are making fun of me because I was. That's how bad we were.
You were a fan of your hometown team, right?
Yeah, and that made me a loser. Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I really think that you guys are turning the corner. Apparently, everyone thinks it's Hugh Jackson that's holding the team back. I don't follow the Browns close enough to know that, but I do trust some of the people that are saying it. But like I said, I think you guys have definitely got a lot of really nice pieces, and I think Dorsey's the guy to get you there.
Absolutely.
We almost had dinner with Dorsey.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, we went to Frenchie's over there in Clearwater when we were down there the night before, and right before our table was called, they were like, "Dorsey, party of 4." Dorsey, and Joe's all like, "Hey."
I'm looking around. I'm like, is he here? The Doors? Is it true?
Doors.
So, just to expand this talk just from Buccaneers to greater football in general, I said this to the guy we talked to with the Bears. I really hope that we are in a time in the National Football League where these teams that have been perennially good and perennially going to the playoffs and the teams who perennially aren't, that those two positions are going to switch and be switched for a while. Not just a flash season here or there, but I hope that that's where we are getting to the NFL, because I'm tired of seeing these other teams in the playoffs all the time, and I would like to see a playoffs full of teams like the Bucs and the Bears and the you guys, the Browns,
maybe.
I just kept trying to say
fingers crossed.
Basically, if your name starts with a B, your team name starts with a B, I want to see you in the play. No, but anyway,
that's going to be the song, right?
If your name starts with
stands for Broncos, BMW, bass, banjo, and remember that song?
No.
Good. I don't like it. No more about it.
With that, Red, in the few remaining minutes we have here, let's grade out this team and get out of here for today. How do you grade out the team, offense, defense?
Yeah, we should let Joe pick too. Not his, but I want to see how after seeing the game through a opposing team's fan. Actually, you should, Joe. You know what? I would. Is that okay, Brendan?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I think it's cool. He's not prepared for this, so you may have to think about it for a second.
It's all right. Just what we're doing is just giving letter grades A through F like you would in high school about how you think the offense, defense, and the special teams played for the Buccaneers.
Cool. Let's go. or am I just
Yeah.
going right now?
Yes, you are going right now.
Okay.
Guess
let's
go
see.
first. You've never heard an example of how we do this, so have at it.
Yeah.
All right.
No cheating.
All right. So offensively, I think I would give them I'd give them like a B.
Okay.
I know I was really, really frustrated with the Buccaneers
were.
offense.
Yeah, you were.
As a Browns fan in the first half.
He says to me, Tampa fans are going to love this. He says to me right after a first down, and they do in the stadium, they go, "First down, Tampa," and then the stadium yells, "Bay!" And he looks at me, he goes, "That's getting so old. I'm so sick of hearing that."
It's getting old quick. But yeah,
I think
just
they had 34 first downs in the
Yes,
game.
they did.
Set a franchise record. But anyway, sorry, Joe.
no, it's okay. It just seemed like every pass that Jameis was throwing was getting caught. And I'm
Amazing! Sorry.
it is amazing.
Hey,
As a Browns fan, it's amazing.
Apparently, the fandom wants to get rid of Jameis. Would you guys?
Well, we got Baker now. I think I'm good with Baker. But it was just frustrating because the receivers were catching everything, and the Browns have been dealing with drop passes for the past couple of weeks, which has been very frustrating. So it's like, man, this is what an offense is supposed to look like. So I know they sputtered a little bit in the second half. They let the Browns get back in the game in the second half. But I think overall, they won the game. Jameis put them in a position to win, and they did win. So offense, I'd give them a B. Defense, they played pretty well up until that fourth quarter. They let Baker get back in the game and drive him down for 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. So I would probably put them, I don't know, maybe C.
Okay.
Just for letting the Browns get back in the game when they really had no right to be in that game. And then as far as special teams, I mean, the kicker obviously lowers the grade a little bit, but I'll tell you that punter was booming kicks. He was booming them. So I'd probably put him in the middle of the road too. And at the end of the day, the kicker made the 59-yard kick to win the game. So maybe I'll give him a C as well.
Not bad.
Yeah,
Not
I like
bad.
it. He even followed it up with a little commentary. Yeah.
All right, Ren.
My grades are going to be a little better. Shocker across the board. I'm giving the offense an A. I went back and watched the game, and the Bucs stopped themselves except for 2 drives. At one point, it was 2nd and 25. Jameis got a pass batted down, so now it's 3rd and 25. And you know what he does? He throws a frozen rope between 3 Browns defenders. That's a little bit behind Adam Humphries, right at the first down marker. If that's O.J. Howard or Cameron Brate or Mike Evans, he catches it. Like, it would have been a good catch. It wouldn't have made SportsCenter top 10. But another example of it's 3rd and 25, and he's that close to picking up the first down.
Right.
He didn't check down. Oh, here you go, Quiz Rogers. See if you can break 30 tackles. Like, he went for it, almost got it. I just like Joe said, every time he threw the ball, it looked complete. I just watched the game, and he was 32 of 52. Like, I cannot remember 20 misses. Like, I can't. He looked really good on the review. The defense, I'm also giving an A. Fourth, even though, like you said, they let him back in the game. One of it was a really short field because of Peppers on the kick return. It was like 14 yards away, and they stopped him on a goal line stand on 4th down, which does not happen in Tampa ever. Like, we can't stop anybody on short yardage. Haven't for a couple years. And shutting him out in the first half. Would have liked to seen a turnover, but 5 sacks. I don't – there's nothing really negative about it, especially when you start to add in the injuries. And the special teams, oh, God. It's just like, I want to give them an F because if it wasn't for the special teams, we wouldn't have been in that situation in overtime. But then they caused the fumble that ultimately won the game. And like we've said for the past 10 minutes here, hey, he made the kick. He made the 59-yarder.
Right.
So I guess I'm giving him a C. So overall, I'm giving the team a B+. Lots of penalties, lots of turnovers, but Jameis refused to let them lose. And I think that deserves a B+ overall.
All right. Well, for me, I'm going to have to grade this according to my memory, not how you have hyped me up and made me feel right now, Red. So that said, I'm giving the offense a C, and I'll remind people, my grading system, I kind of think of it. A C is you did what we asked you to do. A B means you went better than that, and an A is you blew my mind. A D is you didn't do what we asked you to do. C, I think, is what we asked you to do. They went in, they had a pretty decent first half. Would they go up 17-2, 16-2, something like that? They were fine. The second half, though, at the end of the game, we only scored, what did we have? 10 more points after that, I guess. So 1 touchdown and then the field goal to win the game. So let's take out that field goal because that was overtime at the very end. We only had the 1 more field goal. I would have liked to have seen that continue to go on. So, to me, I think the defense or the offense did what we asked. I was a little actually disappointed with the offense, to tell you the truth, because of what we have seen from this offense so far this year. And this is this the lowest scoring? No, it's not. It's the second lowest scoring our offense has had in this season, right?
The Bears game is always going to be the lowest score,
right? I mean, if you take that out as the anomaly, as we've come to call it here in Tampa, so I did expect to see a little bit more of a higher scoring game, especially coming out of the half. I expected. I never expect them to go in and double in the second half what they did in the first half, but I did hope.
Kind
to
of
see
sounds
a little bit
like
more.
you do.
I kind of at this point, yeah, yeah. Well, they scored 2 in the first quarter, but
what's
half,
average?
But now it seems
I wanted to add,
1-1.
what's average for you? Like, do what you're supposed to. How many points is that for you right now?
28.
Like, how many?
I'm going to say 28. Four touchdowns. I think that is what this team should be scoring every game is 28 points.
So if they get 28, do they get a C plus or a B minus?
It depends on how they got there. To take your answer, depends on how they got there. But anyway, that's kind of where I'm leaving because I was not overwhelmed with, man, this offense is great. It was I was satisfied with what they did. But I got to tell you, Jameis and those runnings and how he really, he put this team on his back, man. It was something else to see. But I mean, Mike Evans, you said on the Instant Cast, Ren, Mike Evans had the quietest 100-yard game of his career.
Yeah,
and you're right. I mean, it's. I looked up because I looked it up to see did he happen to get over 100 yards, and I was shocked.
I was shocked how many catches he had too. I'm like, he had 7 for 107. Like, really?
Yeah.
Really? I remember 3, and I just rewatched the game, and I'm still like, 100. Really, 100 yards?
Yeah. I mean, there's the. Of course, I'm like everyone else. I'm still disappointed in this Jameis Deshaun connection that never seems to materialize.
Catch the ball in the end zone.
Yeah, I just, but the running game is still flat. Offensive line still had some issues. So, I could pick some of these pieces apart. So it didn't blow me away, but you know what? They kept us up by 2 scores most of the game, right? And that's what I've said. If this is the offense, I know you say 40. I just say 2 scores. Keep us ahead by 2 scores. Right up till that last quarter, right? To the fourth quarter. So that's my grade for offense as a C. The defense, I'm not going to give them an A, Ren. I'm sorry, but I will give them a B plus. I will give them a B plus. That I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised. They certainly have played higher than they have. I think there was a lot of mitigating factors to that, but I need to see what they do moving forward. And even that's going to be hard without Quan. I think we're going to really feel the absence of Quan going forward. So, but they played better. They certainly surprised me. They did more than what I thought they would do. And I would have liked to have seen this defense be on this team since the beginning of the season. Special teams, I give them a D. Sorry. I know you made that game-winning thing at the end. I know Brian Anger had a fairly decent day, but 2 missed picks by Chandler Catanzaro. Kind of, one guy ruins the whole thing. So I give him a D. But he did make that game winner at the end. So overall, to me, this was a C-plus game, Ren. It's a C-plus. It was good. It's what I expected. It was a little bit better. It was kind of on the plus end, but nothing really fully blew my socks off.
Now, I think your grades are fair.
All right. All right. Well, Ren, with that, this is already a long episode, so we are going to go ahead and cut this one here. Joe, thank you for joining us once again. Tales from Godric's Hollow.
Yeah.
Go find it, guys. Go find it. It's a cool episode. And by the way, those episodes are evergreen, so you can really go all the way back to the very beginning, listen to those, and get caught up. But coming up next, Ren, you and I are going to go through the emails that we have received for this week. Lots of great conversation that always comes out of that. But until we come back here in just a couple of days, in the meantime, tell the people out there where they can find you on the internet.
Find me on Twitter. It's always the best way because Facebook is dead. REN_DAXT. Can I sing? Should I sing? I think I should sing.
Only if you do it like Donna Summers.
Oh, I can't do that, man. I don't got the boobs for it. I'm always down to talk Buccaneers football.
If you want to get in touch with me, I am at Brent Allen Live across all the social medias. And the show is at The Pewtercast on Twitter and Facebook. Shoot us an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com or join the growing community of people over at patreon.com. Get some cool kickbacks as well, and get a hangout. Actually, we got one of those we got to get scheduled here coming up here soon, Ren, with us. So find out all that information, patreon.com/the Pewtercast. Well, guys, we'll be back with you here in just a couple of days with the second half of this episode, and then we've got our Buck in the News show coming up later this week. We'll be right back at it with the Instant Cast, all that fun stuff. So until then, guys, go Bucks.